Melvin Herman Sparks was born Friday, March 22, 1946, in Houston, Texas, to father Daniel Sparks Sr. and mother Jessie Lee Sparks. Melvin was the youngest of 5 children and was preceded by sisters Wilma, Dorothy, and brothers Daniel Jr., Alfred, and Ernest. The Sparks family lived in an all-black middle-class neighborhood of the 610 Loop in Eastern Houston called Clinton Park. Clinton Park began to develop after World War II due to the area's close proximity to the Port of Houston. When this area was first developed, laws required segregation between blacks and whites.
The neighborhood that I grew up in Houston is a neighborhood called Clinton Park. Yeah, it's not a very popular neighborhood, but the one thing that I'm proud about Clinton Park is that Clinton Park was owned and purchased by African Americans before I was born. So that's, it's nothing, I guess I can say I'm proud of that because those people achieved something that was very hard to do at the time.
Melvin's father worked nights as a manufacturer at the Hughes Tool Company, while Jessie Lee, an accomplished piano player, worked as a blues singer and choir director for her church. In the Sparks household, Daniel Sr. ruled with an iron fist, but Jessie Lee was the life of the party.
Big Mama was a lot of fun. Always cheery, always happy. Yep. All the time. I never seen her upset. People could do something and she just look right over it and bring the spirits right back up. That's just the type of person I remember her as. And then Big Daddy, that was a different story. Real serious dude. Real serious. He come in there and everybody be ready to leave when he showed up.
Melvin's upbringing, when being raised by Jessie Lee, was full of music, singing, and encouragement. Daniel Sr. was a straightforward, no-nonsense type of father who was stern with his children as well as his wife.
You gotta know something about Big Daddy. Big Daddy was a mean dude. I remember him coming out. I remember him coming out to pick us up, to take us out to Clinton Park when we was little kids. And I'll never forget, we got inside his car and he stayed in that rear view mirror. And he said, don't lean on the doors. Do not touch the doors. If we leaned up, put our arm on the door, he'd have a fit. I told you, get your arm off the door. Don't lean on the doors. And you could see his eyes in that rearview mirror constantly while he was driving. He was watching everything we did back in that backseat. That dude there was real serious. I mean, you gotta remember, he was, the time he grew up and he spent, around, people at that time, it was very prejudiced. People used to talk to people crazy. The white people used to, if you went to them to buy something, to do some business with them, they would talk to you crazy. But he didn't accept that. They couldn't do that to him.
During the mid-1950s, the entrepreneurial spirit of Jessie Lee presented an idea to Daniel that would later have a huge effect on Melvin's life. Enter Jessie's Place and Sparks Barbecue.
We had a good business, and people would, whenever they would come to Houston, they wanted to come to Sparks Barbecue place. And all the different musicians, they come by, and they would, sometimes they'd bring their instruments, and, sometimes they wouldn't, but they would show up and, it'd be a lot of people.
Jessie's Place was frequented by many musicians. At any given time, you may find Don Wilkerson, Billy Harper, Cal Green, and Stix Hooper hanging out, having a few drinks, or sitting in on a jam session. Sparks Barbecue serves its welcoming customers and also the community. Jessie Lee's musical DNA was inherited by Daniel Jr., Alfred, and Melvin, while the others, well, let's just say it was too much to carry.
Wilma, Dorothy, and my dad couldn't hold a note. even in the hand.
As children, Daniel Jr. began his musical journey as a drummer. Alfred played a variety of instruments: the trumpet, guitar, and drums. But Melvin, following the footsteps of Daniel Jr., played the drums as well. By the age of 10, Melvin's interest in drums diverged into strums.
When my father was a kid, he told my grandfather he wanted an electric guitar. When he priced the guitar, it ended up being around $40 to $60. He said, $60? Are you kidding? So my grandmother told my grandfather, you have to get him the guitar. I believe he was 11 years old at the time. So since my grandfather ended up getting the guitar for him, he said he had to take lessons and really learn how to play. He didn't really think he was interested. He probably thought he would do it for 2 or 3 months and that would be the end of it. He took lessons for about 8 months until my grandfather couldn't afford it anymore. He kept on playing after that because playing the guitar is what kept him out of trouble.
I don't remember him doing any other thing. Touching a basketball or baseball or anything. The only thing he touched was that guitar. And if it wasn't about music, he wasn't interested.
While Melvin's attention was focused on music, his elder siblings were moving further away from it. Daniel Sr.'s idiosyncrasies built tensions in the home, forcing Wilma to uproot out west to California. Dorothy began a new life 16 hours away in Gary, Indiana. Daniel Jr. joined the Navy. Alfred migrated 2 hours away in San Antonio, Texas. And Ernest often drifted to various homes in various places. With the guitar being Melvin's main focus, he helped to incorporate a sound only found in Texas musicians.
Basically, the blues, and particularly what we call shuffle music, really somewhat originated in Houston and in Texas. And a lot of the popular blues guitar players either lived there or originated there, such as Gatemouth Brown, Wide Mouth Brown, T-Bone Walker, Lightning Hopkins, and I could go on. Cal Green of the Midnighters, from Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. In fact, when Bobby Blue Bland first put his band together, most of the musicians was from Houston.
During his teen years, Melvin attended Phyllis Whitley High School. He credited his school for having a very good music department, one that stimulated the people in his program. One of Melvin's schoolmates who attended Phyllis Whitley High School was singer Archie Bell from the group Archie Bell and the Drells. It was rumored that Melvin was the original guitarist on Archie Bell's 1967 hit song, Tighten Up, before being replaced by guitarist Will Thomas. Every time that conversation was brought up, Melvin just laughed it off. Outside of school, Melvin trained with American music educator Mr. Conrad Johnson from Houston's Cashmere High School stage band. Melvin mastering his craft from Mr. Johnson was huge, but in 1959, at just 13 years old, Melvin got the opportunity to play with one of his musical inspirations.
At the age of 13, going to see B.B. King in concert was a big deal for my father. After telling a guy backstage that he wanted to play the guitar, the guy shoved him out on the stage and said, "Go on out there on the stage and play." The band saw him and looked around and wondered, who is this little guy coming out here on the stage? B.B. King asked him what he wanted, and he told him that he wanted to play his guitar. He went on the mic and told the audience, "This little guy wants to play my guitar." He asked the audience if he should let him play. The crowd said yes, let him play, because all they wanted to do was throw stuff at him, kind of like what they used to do to performers at the Apollo. So my father played a blues song. He thought it was pretty good. The audience liked it, and he told him, "Play another one." They had it in the newspaper the next day. My grandfather couldn't believe it because, first of all, my grandparents, they didn't even know he was down there. He didn't say anything to his mother when he got home because in those days, my grandmother owned that cafe and she would stay open till about 12 midnight. She was closing up when he got home, and again, he didn't say anything to her. So the next day, they picked up the paper, and lo and behold, my father.
Melvin's music teacher at Phyllis Whitley wasn't too happy about Melvin playing with B.B. King. He thought it was great, but he wanted more from him. He wanted Melvin to know music theory and how to write charts. So by the 10th grade, Melvin was doing just that. When Melvin's band opened up for B.B. King some 50 years later, Melvin asked B.B. if he remembered that night, but B.B. stated he'd meet people all the time and didn't remember that night. In 1963, Melvin left school to play professionally. He got his first gig with Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. He played with Hank for a short while, but was not allowed to go on the road. Because Melvin was just a teen, Hank didn't want to introduce him to the evils of being on the road. As a result, Melvin left the band, but it didn't take long for him to find more work. His second gig was with a band formed by Little Richard called the Upsetters. Sam Cooke's band leader, Cliff White, took a liking to Melvin and mentored him during his time with the group. He spent 3 years with the Upsetters, backing everyone from Little Willie John, Sam Cooke, Little Richard, Jackie Wilson, Curtis Mayfield, and Marvin Gaye. In 1966, while on the road, Melvin received some devastating news. His mom, Jessie Lee Sparks, passed away from breast cancer at the age of 56. In 1967, Melvin left the Upsetters to join brother Jack McDuff. He spent a year and a half with him and credits him with being a good teacher and providing a stimulating atmosphere in which to play. When Melvin connected with Jack McDuff, this was a great opportunity for his uprising career.
With McDuff, I was doing whatever McDuff, did. He did both studio and live stuff. They were relying on me because of my youth and to get the feel of the today's experience. McDuff was from the old school. They were from the 50s, Yeah. And I'm from mid-60s, 70s, coming out of the Upsetters. So they would, McDuff would write these songs and call them rehearsal. And then he would take all his rhythm ideas from me. He'd say, okay, Melvin, what do you think? Let's play it this way. And sometimes I say, oh no, McDuff, this way here, let's try this. And McDuff would give me some thought. Oftentimes he would go with rhythm that I recommended. Not all the time, most of the time.
After Melvin's run with McDuff, he had a 1-year stint with the legendary Dr. Lonnie Smith. Between working with the Upsetters and Jack McDuff, 4.5 years of professionalism had been solidified, and Melvin was just getting started.
My name is Louis Andrew Donaldson, born 11/1/26. That means I'm 95 and still alive. Born in a little town in North Carolina, Badin. Baden. It's so bad they call it Bad Inn instead of Baden. I was on the road at the time, and I had a gig in Houston. And we had a guitar player named Grant Green, one of the world's greatest guitar players, but he was a junkie. And traveling on the road was a little too hazardous, because if they caught you crossing the state line with narcotics, they gave you 10 years automatically, no trial. Plus they took your car and everything else you had. So when Melvin came and sat in, I liked the way he played, and I asked him if he wanted the gig. He said yes. He seemed to fit in with the way we were playing, and that's the reason I liked him. He had a way of playing background, which we call comping. He knew how to comp. And that's to play what he played and stay out of my way when I'm playing. Hard to do, because you hear a lot of bands and so much stuff is going on, you can never hit a melody. So I'm dropping bombs, organ player playing on the organ, guitar player playing on the guitar. You never get the feeling of the music. But with Melvin, you always got the feeling of the music. Plus, he was always smiling, so that meant he liked what he was playing and what he was hearing at the same time. Music, as you know, is an art. And you can study, you can do this, you can do that. But it's not but one thing that makes you play it. It's talent. And Melvin had that. It's talent. That's the only thing that helps you. You can do anything you want to do. But in the finality of it is how much talent you have. And Melvin could pick up stuff right away, you know. Like a lot of other guitar players couldn't. I had a real good deal when I had Melvin and Joe Dukes, the drummer, working together, because they'd pick up my rhythm. Once they heard a song, from then on, they played it correct, you know. They never varied it, never did anything. And that's what he had, and that's exactly what he left behind here.
In 1969, Melvin was steady at work. In that year, he appeared on several albums: Lou Donaldson's Hot Dog, Lonnie Smith's albums Turning Point and Think, and Reuben Wilson's Blue Mode. That same year, he was featured on Charles Earland's rendition of More Today Than Yesterday, which became a huge smash for Melvin. His consistent work ethic made him a go-to session player with Blue Note Records. In those times, Blue Note often booked a fair amount of sessions for their roster. In return, their artists were able to cut an album in 2 days. Many of the sessions were recorded at the historic Van Gelder studio in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. With the 60s coming to a close, Melvin's temporary residency in New York City became permanent. His brother and mentor Daniel Jr., now married with a family of his own, extended a hand in sheltering his younger brother and introducing him to some movers and shakers on the jazz scene.
My name now is Jesse Hameen II. I was born Jesse Kilpatrick Jr. My nickname was and still is Cheese. When I met Melvin, my name was Jesse Kilpatrick Jr. So Melvin had a hand which will evolve to in me becoming Jesse Hameen II. Back in the 60s, it was a different scene musically than it is now. I was living in Harlem, and there was so many jazz clubs in Harlem. I'm thinking with Snooki's. So we got word that there's a new young guy in town. I was in my 20s, all in my 20s. So whenever a new musician came in town, so we check him out. So they say, man, there's a new guy in town, man. So what's his name? They said Melvin Sparks, man. So I said, where you from? He's from Texas. What do you play, man? Guitar, man. So let's go check him out. There was a rites of passage back there, you know. That's where we did. That's where we rolled up in Harlem, you know. So I'm sitting there checking him out. Say, yeah, yeah, he could play. You know, Melvin played from the heart, you know. So Cindy came down, we just became instant friends. And actually, he became instant friends with everybody. I mean, he just immediately accepted into it because not just could he play, but that smile he had, you know, it grabbed you, you know, and he was just a cooperative person, you know. So we became immediate friends.
While Melvin was making new friends and seamlessly integrating into the New York jazz scene, his good looks and contagious smile attracted a young gospel singer, during a Norman Fields studio session where Melvin was the musical arranger.
I believe the year was 1968 when my cousin was doing a song, and he had me, my sister, and his sister do the background. So we went to a studio in New York City, and Melvin Sparks was the arranger and playing the guitar. Norman had met Melvin through when he was playing with the Upsetters. So anyway, later on the evening when we were driving home, my sister and my cousin said, "Oh, that guitar player was cute." And I said, "Yeah, he was."
I met Melvin in the studio. My cousin Norman was performing, recording, and my sister Judy, who ultimately became his wife, she was doing background. I was doing background, and my cousin Jerry, who was also Norman's sister, was doing background work, and we were in the studio. And that's how we initially met Melvin.
So we had to go back to the studio a few days later to finish the tune. I went to my cousin, I said, "Is he married?" And he said, "No." I said, how old is he? And he said, 23. And I said, "Oh, he's young." So I told him to let him know that I would like to meet him.
She immediately knew he was the one. And she let my cousin know, let him know I'm interested.
So when we went back to the studio, Norman did tell Melvin, because he approached me and said, "Oh, I'm glad it's you that wanted to meet me." So that started it all.
Fast forward a little bit. So Melvin told me, say, man, you know, I'm about ready to get married and everything, you know. So I didn't have anybody yet, you know. So anyway, so Melvin said, "I want you, you know, this is before they moved to over here on 233rd Street." So Melvin said, "I want you to meet this young lady, man." So, you know, so Melvin knew I had a serious sense of humor, you know, like to do pranks and say certain things, you know, to get people thinking. You know, so I still got it. I can't get that out of me. So I think I did that for you guys today, right? I can't help it. So Melvin said, "Man, I want you to meet this young lady, man. I really like her, man. You know, I think I'm gonna propose to her, man." You know, he says, "But man, but you got to meet her, man. You're my close friend, man." You said, "But take it easy on her, man. Don't go hard on her." So she's softer than us, man. She don't. So I said, "What's her name?" He said, "Her name is Judy." So I said, "Okay, I'll take it easy on it."
Did you?
I did for a few seconds. You know, I couldn't hold back.
I don't think he had any intentions of marrying, because his family from Texas was shocked and told me that I thought he would never marry. I told him, after a year, I told him, "If you don't find a serious, I'm not going to see you anymore, because you're wasting my time. Because I could be, I mean, somebody else can have me." So, and he told me this afterwards. He gave me an engagement ring to shut me up.
With Judy being content, 1970 was big for Melvin. He released his debut album titled Sparks on Prestige Records. On that album, he enlisted organist and childhood friend Leon Spencer Jr. And rounding out the cast was close friends Idris Muhammad, Houston Person, John Manning, and Virgil Jones. The album covered Sly and the Family Stone's Thank You and Wars Spilled the Wine, to name a few. His debut album received a lukewarm response, but for producer Bob Porter, delving deeper into Melvin's musical creativity was a task he was prepared to take on.
So he gave me an engagement ring, and I had that for about a year. But I became pregnant. So at 2 months, while I was 2 months, we got married. February 13th, 1971, we got married on a Friday night in my mother's living room.
Nearly a month after getting married, March 8th, 1971, Prestige released Sparkplug. This indelible release became a favorite with fans and critics. Melvin wrote and produced 3 out of the 5 album cuts. The tracks that gained heavy notoriety was a remake of Kool and the Gang's Who's Gonna Take the Weight and the album's title track. The summer of '71, Melvin was busy. With the success of Sparkplug, his tenure as a band leader garnered familiar opportunities as well as new ones amongst his peers. In that same year, he once again collaborated with Lou Donaldson for his Cosmos LP. Idris Muhammad released 2 albums that year as well, Peace and Rhythm and Black Rhythm Revolution. And his good friend Leon Spencer Jr. also released 2 albums, Sneak Preview and Louisiana Slim. January of 1972, the young couple left their cozy Bronx apartment and got a new apartment in Yonkers, New York. Judy was pregnant with her second child, and Melvin was hard at work on his 3rd album, Aquila. The 6-song LP featured 5 tracks that was written and produced by Melvin. February of 1972, organist and fellow associate Caesar Frazier released his debut album on Eastbound Records titled Hail Caesar, in which Melvin produces the title track. Caesar explains on how he met Melvin.
Melvin and I met in about 1971. And a drummer named Greg Williams, he knew Melvin. He knew Lou Donaldson. He had worked with both of them. He sat in with my band, and after we took a break, he said, well, man, I like what you do. He says, I know somebody that can use you. And he got on the phone, and back then it was all pay phones, and he called Lou Donaldson and say, I got a guy out here you might want to use. Lou had an organ player, but I think he was not really, he wanted to make a change. Greg Williams, the drummer, Greg introduced me. He called Lou Donaldson and told him that I got a guy that might fit your band. Charles Erlin had left Lou's band and gone out on his own. And so Lou said, okay, well, I'm going to be playing up in Detroit week after next. And he said, come up here and sit in and we'll see what happens. So when I went to Detroit about 2 weeks later and found the place that Lou was playing, sit in, Melvin was in that band. So that was my first encounter with Melvin. So I sit in, and obviously Lou must have been reasonably happy with what he heard. And he said, well, you got to come to New York. So I went back to Indianapolis. I disbanded my band. And about the next week, I left Indianapolis, went to New York, joined Lou's band, and we started gigging different jobs he had lined up immediately. And Melvin was in that band. Working there all the way to the Pacific Ocean and Hermosa Beach, California, and stopping numerous stops in between. And Melvin and Lou and Billy Kay was the drummer. They'd be talking about all kinds of topics about the business and about who's recording what and this and that and the other. And the one thing I noticed immediately was Melvin's intellect about it all. His intellect about it all. And it was real clear to me that he was not how can I put this? He was not a loose musician. It was like he kept his composure as a professional person very well. And that was real obvious to me. So Melvin and I, we started rooming together. Back then, you wasn't making a lot of money by no stretch of imagination. So when you're going from town to town, you would always try to get, and I can hear Melvin's voice now saying, man, we got to get a rate. And what they meant by the rate, well, they give us a low cost for the room for a week. call it a rate, rather than charging by the night, charged by the week. And so Melvin and I would room together, and so and he was like, Melvin's only just fractionally older than I am, but it was like he had been on the scene a lot longer than me. So it was like he was, and I've said this before when I talk about Melvin, I'll say, oh, Melvin was all like one of my mentors, because I was a pretty young person. I was about 22, 23 years old, and not realizing that Melvin wasn't much older than I was. But he had this composure that suggested that he was older than he really was to me. But anyway, he would tell me things about, and he was the first person that told me, you got to get your own publishing. You got to get your own publishing. I didn't have no realistic clue as to what he meant by that. And what he meant by that as the years rolled on was that controlling your own material that you write is where you're going to get paid.
To an untrained ear, all jazz guitarists sound the same.
Melvin was different. He was different because some of his licks and some of his fill-ins and some of his ideas were not necessarily the ideas of a strictly jazz guitarist. They were ideas that had been taken from out of the R&B circuit, out of the South, and it's something about Texas musicians anyway.
April 1972, the Charles Earland track "Black Talk" with Melvin and Idris Muhammad on the helm was featured on the Ralph Bakshi soundtrack to the film Fritz the Cat. October 6, 1972, Melvin and Judy welcomed twin daughters, just 8 days shy of his third release. In 1973, producer Bob Porter, who brought Melvin to Prestige Records in 1970, left the label to set up Eastbound Records in Detroit, which was a branch of Westbound Records. With Melvin in tow, his fourth album, Texas Twister, was his label debut. On this new album, the prodigious ensemble consisted of Idris Muhammad, Sonny Phillips, Caesar Frazier, Wilbur Bascombe, Cecil Bridgewater, and John Faddis. As an ode to his love for Judy, Melvin dedicated a track titled Judy's Groove.
Why do you think he called it Judy's Groove?
I have no idea, because he didn't even tell me. I don't even know till it came out.
With Melvin's previous LP releases, they always received favorable reviews with critics and core fans, but never to a wider audience. Undeterred, Melvin's love for music is what kept him pushing forward. In 1975, the album 75 was released on Westbound 20th Century label. 75 didn't have that traditional Melvin Sparks sound on this album. You got to remember, he was label mates with Parliament Funkadelic and the Ohio Players, so a lot of that funk influence was heard on this album. And a local singer from Detroit, Jimmy Scott, was also featured on this album, and you've never heard singing on any other previous Melvin Sparks albums. So the days of people going to the jazz club and listening to the jazz bands were out, and disco music was moving in. So people were actually going out to the clubs listening to disco music, and Melvin wanted to be a part of that thing that they were doing at that time, which didn't eventually work out for him. So what the label did was they recorded another album, which they later on shelved, which was I'm Funky Now. But what 75 also did, especially with the track Get You Some, with new music emerging from the Bronx, Get You Some was actually a track that helped to influence that new genre of music coming in. July 19th, 1975, the father of three welcomed another daughter to his ever-growing family. And on June 15th, 1977, Melvin finally had his son. A little over a year after the birth of Melvin Jr., tragedy struck. April 10th, 1978, Melvin's brother Ernest passed away at the age of 36 from a seizure. The mother and father of five had their hands full and needed room to support his family's needs. January 1981, the family left their Yonkers apartment and moved north to Mount Vernon, New York.
When we first got married, he went into the Islamic faith. So, of course, Akila is a Islamic name, so we named our daughter, I think I picked it out, Akila. We had twin girls, and I love the name Idris. So I added a to it to make it Idrissa and Aisha. And then my fourth child we named after my mother, Elizabeth. And my fifth child, Melvin, we named after Melvin because that was my only son. So we had to keep Melvin name alive.
I'm his eldest daughter, and some early memories I have of Dad is playing in his lap with me and my sisters, watching TV and playing a hand game, shaking our hand in front of the TV, something like that. And we just did little silly things like that. Daddy, he was the principled guy. He was no nonsense. I describe him just as that. He was strict. When I was in my teenage years, it was no more playing. It was like more down to business.
Growing up in the Sparks household was happy. I mean, we had both of our parents together with us in one household. So we had an enjoyable childhood. Can't say anything negative about it. So I satisfied with my childhood. Yes, as am I. I had a fun, wonderful experience as a child and in our house in Mount Vernon where we spent most of our childhood. But it was wonderful. My mom was a loving mom and my dad, a loving dad.
He was really a great father. It was such security being a little girl growing up in New York. I remember my father was a musician, so he would work gigs, which made him come home late in the middle of the night when we would normally sleep. But actually, we weren't sound asleep until we heard that door close. So I know when my father came home and I heard that door close, that security blanket, that security feeling of being safe was there. We knew every night he was coming home.
It was good. It was great. I had a great childhood, I feel, having 4 older sisters. That's not bad at all, being the only son, that's great for, a child growing up because, having 4 older sisters, you become more social, because females are just more social, period. So, that's how you become. Even though, I'm kind of like a quiet, because I think I got that from Dad. He's, a little quiet, on the more quiet side, but he definitely speaks his mind still, and he definitely talks. So, yeah.
Daddy was loving. He was there. He worked a lot. He was out of town a lot, but he was there when it mattered. Mm-hmm. So, we loved him. I loved him, and I knew that he loved me. So, yeah, I would say my relationship with my father was very candid. I would go to him for advice. Any big decisions I would make in my life, I would talk to my dad, and he would support me. And he would stick behind me. So I would say it was a very good relationship. Yeah, he supported us in any endeavors that we wanted to go into. He was very supportive dad.
My oldest sister might say that she saw the disciplinary side of my father. And then the twins came. So I'm number 4 of 5. So by the time they got to me, I think I did get more of a laid back version of my father. So, but his presence, was enough for me. So, you know, if I heard him walking up those stairs towards me and I knew that I did something wrong, that was enough. I already punished myself, so to speak. He didn't have to punish me. He didn't have to spank me. Just making my father not happy or making him disappointed was sort of my punishment. And I never liked disappointing my father in any way.
But I really feel like he treated us all equally, you know. He didn't really have any favorites, even though I felt, you know, I think he all probably made us felt that way. But, you know, certain things I remember when Idrissa, we had a fight and he yelled at her instead of me, so maybe I should.
Do you remember what the fight was?
I don't know, it was back in the days.
Wow.
Yeah, but like I said, though, I think Daddy didn't really I think he treated everybody equally. It's just that how he made you feel, you know?
I think he knows that he was really, really good and special. I really do. Yeah, because it was. I just remember, and you guys know this, we lived at the end of a dead-end street, and we was in a neighborhood predominantly black, probably 100% black. And Daddy used to blast that. We probably serenaded the whole neighborhood. And I don't think we got any complaints, but I say that to say that his music was really, blasted because it was really good.
So growing up, the sisters, myself and my twin, we were a rap group called Dime. And when we would be in the studio or go to parties, people knew us from our dad. And we were like, wow, like, how do they know Daddy? And then, you know, as we got more and more into music, then people, you know, then we realized, okay, he's known internationally. I don't know if you recall a time in the studio and someone was introducing us and they said our last name Sparks. And then they saw us smile and said, wait a minute, are you Melvin Sparks' daughters? And we were like, yes. Yes, they knew us by our smile and the name Sparks.
He mentored a lot of people that's still doing really well in music to this day. So when I saw people coming over to learn from my father, I knew he was special, but unfortunately, I didn't know really the extent to his celebrity until he passed, and we was getting all the greeting cards from all over the world. And I know that's how it works sometimes. You know, in America, we could be one-track minded and only listen to American music, but my father was great worldwide.
I knew that he loved music, and that was what he wanted to do, and he did it, and he was very serious about it and stuff like that. So that's something that he did. He always wanted to do it, and he accomplished that, and that's a great thing.
He wanted his family happy. Anything his family wanted, he gave. He didn't celebrate Christmas, but he would give his children toys just because it was the holidays. So I know his family basically was his number one, then his religion, then his music.
Are you still a Muslim yourself?
Oh, yes. I'm Muslim. I believe in the religion of Islam, which believes in brotherhood, complete brotherhood of all people. But at the same time that I believe in this brotherhood, I don't believe in forcing my desire for brotherhood upon those who aren't willing to accept it.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Closer to my teen years, I really I don't know. I met Melvin. Melvin was the first time I was introduced into Islam, because all I knew was Christianity, because I was around it all my life. I had questions always that nobody could answer about Christianity because it puzzled me. So when I heard this new religion, I said, what? What? Because I never heard anything like this before.
He didn't initially introduce me to Al-Islam, but he introduced me to the nation, which was a beautiful thing because it gave me self-assurance. Because in the era we grew up in, we predominantly were around Caucasians, but I still felt like I wasn't equal. So when I heard this language, I was all in. I was all in. And Melvin did that.
He started out with them. You know, that's who brought him in. He came in through the nation. Yeah, he came in through that. His introduction to Islam was through the Nation of Islam. I remember going to what was that? Randall's Island, one of the islands with Farrakhan and Elijah Muhammad and all of them out there, and they would have that big I forget what they call it, like bazaar fair, or whatever it was. They would have it out there every year. And I remember going out there with him and seeing all of them, Muhammad Ali, everybody used to be out there back then. It was a good time, man, real good time back then. As he got older, I noticed he changed a lot because he started seeing, just like Malcolm X, he started seeing different types of Muslims. So he left the nation and he became more orthodox, I guess you call it, you know? Because he didn't stay with them for the full ride.
One day I was praying. I always pray. Say, oh God, whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are, please make yourself known to me. Please make yourself manifest to me. I can't take my music, my life, anywhere, any further without you. I need you in my life, wherever you are. So anyway, I have to pray that prayer. So one time I'm praying, so God, wherever you are, please, I need you in my life. I can't take my life any further. My doorbell rang. So I came to the door, so Melvin saw the look at my face. It looked like he might have been disturbing me or something. So he said, look like I would disturb you or something. I said, yeah, man, you did, man. You interrupted something. So what were you doing? So I was praying. He said, you prayed, man? He said, I know you prayed. I said, yeah, what do you mean you don't know I prayed? You know, so I pray every day, brother, you know. So he said, man, well, that's what I'm here to talk to you about. So what are you talking about? You know, so I want to invite you out, man, to come down there to the temple, man, you know. You know, so he said, man, I went out there, I'm a Muslim now, man, you know what I'm saying? so I said, yeah, but they're not talking about God, man. I want to hear about God. He said, no, man, that's what they're talking about, man. I became a Muslim. So Melvin, the one that got me to be a Muslim. So now I see that's why God put Melvin in my life, you know, for bringing me to my worship.
Growing up Muslim is really going to be an impactful part of my childhood. It really, I think, molded me into the person I am right now.
He raised us in Islam. He was a devout Muslim. We did Ramadan, we did Juma, we went to the celebrations, we learned Arabic. I still remember the alphabet and I still remember praying in Arabic. So eventually I did end up studying yoga, but it goes back into my Islam roots because just opening my eyes to a more conservative path just helped shape who I am today. And I owe all that thanks to my father.
I was working and I know Melvin had went to the Social Security office and said, because he didn't discuss it with me, he said, I changed everybody's name. So I'm the dutiful wife that caters to my husband. So that was it.
Yeah, growing up Muslim was it was strict because we had to go to, Sunday school. We had to learn Arabic. We didn't pray 5 times a day, but
We
we
knew how to.
yes, and he actually gave us a last name, Hassan, that was not our birth last name. So throughout childhood and even high school years and in college, some college, we actually used the name Hassan. Then when it was time to get our license, then we realized that wasn't even our legal last name. So that's kind of when we started using our real last name, which was Sparks.
The name was changed when I was real small, so I didn't really notice the name change until, later on in life when you got to get your license, this and that. So, but I know that he did it, for the religion, So that was something he felt he needed to do, so.
Since shelving his 1976 studio album, the record label decided to cut ties with Melvin. He continued to do session work and performing at various clubs to keep the bills paid. 1982, Melvin legally changes his name to Melvin Sparks Hassan. He also garnered a new deal with Muse Records and released his 6th studio album, Sparkling. Produced by Houston Person, it returned to the classic sound that fans love to hear from a Melvin Sparks album. On the album's liner notes, Melvin apologized for veering off into a funk exploration 6 years prior. Throughout the 80s, jazz never regained its adoration, and albums from artists like Michael Jackson, Prince, Stevie Wonder, and Run DMC were becoming hugely popular. In 1985, Melvin teamed up with drummer Alvin Queen and his good friend Lonnie Smith to release the album Lennox and Seventh. Although Melvin took a break from recording his own albums, he stayed busy with session work and club gigs. He was often out for days and sometimes weeks at a time. The cost of living on a musician's salary wasn't easy, so every day was a hustle. While Melvin's schedule had him on the road, the same very thing that Hank Ballard tried to keep him away from some years prior arrived in the form of a letter.
I was in the basement and looking through pictures, and I found a picture of a woman that called him Teddy Bear. I think she was from Chicago, out west somewhere, Midwest. And I don't want to say what the picture was. I still have the vision of the picture, but I won't describe it. It was her in the nude.
Moving past that small hiccup, the 90s ushered in what some may say was hip-hop's golden era. Lou Donaldson's 1969's version of the Isley Brothers song It's Your Thing featured an all-star cast of the era's finest musicians. The famous track was sampled and used by De La Soul, Brand Nubian, Supercat, and The Lox. Brother Jack McDuff's song Do It Now was sampled by Bronx natives, Showbiz and AG, Remy Ma, and French Montana. A track on Melvin's 75 album, If You Want My Love, was sampled by the Stimulated Dummies production team for Hard to Obtain's L.I. Groove. The track Speak Low, a song on the Sparkling album, was sampled by the Beatminers for the Ultramagnetic song Papa Large Remix. The hip-hop community since 1975 have always been paying homage to Melvin sampling his music. This beautiful culture of sampling that many tried to shun as stealing in the early days of hip-hop was now getting Melvin non-stop gigs. For Melvin, the late 90s into the new millennium was tapered with several passings involving family. February 11th, 1997, Melvin's father, Daniel Sparks Sr., who had been ill for some time, passed away. His funeral was filled with bittersweet memories that the family toiled with for many years. 2 years later, after his dad's death, Melvin's sister, Wilma, passed away on September 13th, 1999. Then on October 10th, 2001, Melvin's eldest brother, mentor, the one who played a key role in introducing Melvin to all the movers and shakers in New York City, Daniel Jr., passed away from cancer at the age of 72. Daniel kept his illness private and died peacefully in his home in Mount Vernon, New York. During the next 15 years, Melvin performed a slew of club dates and appeared on various albums. Recording an album of his own wasn't foreseen in his immediate future, but he did, however, take on a new gig as a grandfather. In 1997, Melvin secured a deal with Ron Levy's Cannonball Records and released his 8th studio album, I'm a Guitar Player. The album featured a blues remake of Casey and the Sunshine Band's Get Down Tonight, featuring Melvin's daughters Aisha and Idrissa, along with Jennifer Durkin on the track. Ron was fond of Melvin, and the two formed a close-knit relationship that lasted for years.
So when I first met Melvin, I was kind of shy, but he was so nice and sweet to me that, we just kind of hit it off. And we didn't become friends then, but later on, there was this jazz club in Beverly, Massachusetts called Sandy's. It was Sandy's Jazz Revival in Beverly, Mass. And Sandy Berman, who was the owner of the club, who took it over from his parents, hooked Melvin and I up with Arnett Cobb, the great Texas tenor saxophone player. And that's when Melvin and I really got a chance to get better acquainted. And, from then on, it was a really nice friendship. And later on in years, I'd go see Melvin, and Melvin would come to see me play with different bands. A lot of times our paths just crossed at the different festivals. You couldn't have asked for a better person to work with on every level. I mean, he was a quick study. We just always had a lot of fun and a lot of laughs working together.
After Melvin's contract with Cannonball expired, he signed a 4-album deal with Savant Records. 2002's What You Hear Is What You Get album by Melvin Sparks Band debuts. Between 2002 and 2005, Melvin introduced several variations of the Melvin Sparks Band to the world. 2006 presented a cemented version.
So I had been up in Boston, and I had been kind of like grinding a gig life out, teaching 1,000 drum lessons and playing so many pickup gigs and weddings and the whole thing. And I got a call from my friend Paul Wollstonecroft, who was playing organ with Melvin. And I believe, I don't know if this has grown in my mind as the truth or not, but I'm pretty sure the drummer quit on stage the night before. He and Melvin had a disagreement, and the drummer quit. And then they had gigs. They needed somebody right away. And it turned out I had just quit music, so my schedule was wide open. So I did the gigs, and I remember the first one really well. It was like kind of like a festival in a field, like a little bit, not really a jazz festival, maybe kind of like a rock and jazz festival. And I knew I wasn't going to be, this is before everything was streaming too, right? So it wasn't like just pull up Spotify and learn the music. I kind of had to fly by the seat of my pants, so I pulled out a bunch of Grant Green CDs I had and tried to listen to music that I thought sounded like what Melvin would sound like. But I knew that he had played with Jack McDuff, and I loved the drummer Joe Dukes. And right away I asked Melvin about Joe Dukes, and he kind of like loosened up a little, and he said, "Oh, you know Joe Dukes?" And I said, "Yeah, I love Joe Dukes." He said, "Okay." And so then we talked a little about Joe Dukes, and I feel like I got a couple get out of jail free cards from that conversation. So, because I'm sure that I wasn't that great that first time, but he saw like a respect for what he does that got me somewhere.
Funny story. I had fired my guitar player because he was too stoned all the time. And the bass player that I was working with at the time said, I've got a guitar player for you. And he said the name, and I said, sounds familiar. And he said, you're going to love him. And we get on the gig, this little room in New Jersey, in Bergen County. And he's already there all set up. I walk in, I've got my song list. I call the first song, I call the first tune, and it was just jamming. And we just, bam, the whole night was so funky, and it was like effortless. I was in the car in New York City the next day and listening to BGO, and we turned on the radio. And I hear this like organ thing going on, and I'm like, that's cool. I Love You More Today. I know that song, but I never really liked that song that much, but I like this version. And then it hit the guitar solo, and I went, I think that's the same guy I played with last night.
I was recommended to him by somebody to take guitar lessons. So I used to go to his place in Mount Vernon and take some guitar lessons with him, you know. You know, he was really strict as far as like, you know, playing a certain way. But, you know, he took me under his wing and he started recommending me for gigs, you know. He got me on an Irene Reed record, and he also recommended me to Jimmy McGriff, who I got to play with. And I think he recommended me to Lou Donaldson and some other people too. You know, just in general, he just, you know, all throughout, until he passed away, you know, we were talking and, you know, talking about producing stuff. He always trying to get me signed with somebody. You know, really nice guy, really great guy, you know.
When I was at WFTU, that's when we started to that's how I really got to know Melvin Sparks. Because somebody had said, you interested in talking to Melvin? And probably was, and I can't be definitive about it, probably was through the Fields, Joe and Barney Fields at then High Note Savant. And they said, will you be interested? And I said, Melvin Sparks, sure. I've been listening to Melvin since the 70s, maybe even the late 60s. So I said, sure, that would be a thrill. And, you know, we got to know each other. We got to be friendly. We did radio. He used to stop by here. He dug going through my record collections, of which you only saw a brief part of. I've been selling some of them, saying I'm not going to live forever, so I might as well enjoy it. But at the same side, Melvin would say, do you have this? I say, yeah, I have that, or I didn't have that, or whatever. He said, can I borrow it? He used to call me, my last name being Putignano, he always just called me Poot. Hey, Poot.
I was aware of Melvin, but that's like you know, there's a lot of ways you can be aware of somebody, right? So I did not have Melvin's CDs, and like I said, it was before streaming, right? So you had to like curate your collection of things, right? You had to go find it and buy it. And we take that for granted now, which is funny. And so I don't think I owned any Melvin stuff, but I was aware of the scene from which he came and his history in it. And that he had been sort of playing all around me. Like, you know, you picture the back in the day, the Village Voice or whatever, you're flipping through and you see the clubs, I would see his name all the time. So I knew, you know, that's the awareness that I had. And I knew that he was kind of an elder statesman, so it was an opportunity to play with someone like that and learn, yeah.
I can't tell you the number of times where there was some controversial thing, not necessarily on my gig, but or some gig or some event, and he'd just go, it's all good. It's all good.
He was really a master guitar player too, Melvin. So he would really step up. And it was really funny. Sometimes he didn't like, you know, he would mention, I don't like John Coltrane too much, but he played the crap out of Giant Steps and those really hard Coltrane tunes. I don't like that Coltrane stuff, you know. But he would be playing Coltrane. You know, he played the hell out of Giant Steps and all those tunes.
So we talked about his mentors a lot. We talked, so you know, I'm a jazz nerd. I'm a music nerd, and so I just was like, I never left Melvin alone. I picture myself a little bit like Scrappy Doo, like at Scooby's heels, just like chasing him around, you know, asking questions like, hey, when you played on this album, and sometimes he'd be like, oh, Bill, I don't remember that album, you know, but it was fine. I think he liked that I cared. Lou Donaldson is absolutely like his major mentor that he spent a lot of time with. I think that it was a big deal to him. He told great Lou Donaldson stories. One that really stays with me, which pertains to this idea of hard love on stage, was that Lou would never say what song you're going to play. He would just start playing. And actually Melvin did that too. Sometimes we might make a set list, but otherwise Melvin just started playing and you picked it up. But he would say that Lou was so into doing that once you knew a tune really well, Lou would never call the tune again. He would never start playing the tune again because you knew it and he wanted to make you play stuff you didn't know, which is kind of cracks me up, you know, because, I mean, is that really what it's about? But I don't know. You know, like it's fun that they did that, you know? So he also talked a lot about Jack McDuff, or as he would say, Mac Duff. He got that gig from George Benson, right? So George Benson basically passed him the Jack McDuff gig. And he was very young, fresh out of Texas when he got the Jack McDuff gig. And he just talked a lot about those guys. They were definitely a generation older than him. And the thing that he brought to the table was, in particular, his approach to playing a rhythm guitar. So I think, like, as you talk to people, you're going to find a lot of people talk about Melvin's rhythm guitar. I remember Melvin telling me there's two things that get me my gigs: my rhythm guitar and my smile.
Well, we were doing a gig in Connecticut, and his horn player came and sat in, and he had come up from New York, and he wasn't all that great, you know. Let me just put it that way. I'm not going to say his name, but he just wasn't all that impressive. And, you know, he went up to Melvin at the end of the night and he says, Melvin, you know, it was so wonderful playing with you. You know, he was like, when was the last time we played together? And Melvin went, tonight. And he had that big smile and that big kind face, you know, and the guy just thought he meant, you know, literally, you know, we just played together tonight, but Melvin meant it for all time.
So we in Cincinnati, and we at Bojangles, and the guy rings me up. So I give him a 20, and then I remember I had some change, and I said, well, let me give him this so that maybe he'll give me back quarters. Now I didn't realize the man couldn't count, right? So when I give him that and I give him that, he looks at the change, he looks at the 20, he looks at the register, and he's like, SHIT, and he walks away. So now I think he's taking my money, right? And I'm like, yo, where you going? And before I could get mad, I had my hand on the counter, and Melvin put his hand on top of my hand and said, it is what it is, man. I said, oh. And then he put that infectious smile on me. So I'm done. Now I can't be mad anymore. Then I realized, oh, he can't count. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? Just give me back. Just give me the change back. Whatever it says, you give it to me, bro. Don't worry about it. But just that infectious smile just shut me down. You know, just shut me down. We laughed about it. He said, but he would always tell me, he said, you got to control that. You have to control that. He said, don't let people take you out of who you are, what you're supposed to be. And then when I said, well, no, that is who I am. He's like, well, no, that's not who you're supposed to be. You know, it's funny because he would impart a lot of Islamic wisdom, but you didn't realize that it was Islamic wisdom. A lot of those things I didn't understand was a part of his Islamic belief until my son became a Muslim. And then I hear my son talking, and I'm like, uh-oh, I heard that before. He always seemed pressured to be in control of everything. And he always wanted to save every penny. He was very frugal in terms of
what we did and like we had a bad argument one time. And he told me, he said, "This is why I don't hire band leaders, other band leaders, because we were in, I forget what time we were in the Midwest. I think we were in Cleveland." And it was this little dive bar. You know, we'd hit a bunch of dive bars in between gigs. And over top of the bar was an apartment. It was one of those two-story um, places. So we went up to the apartment. It looked like that. It looked like the people from the bar and their friends used that apartment for any and everything. So I'm like, I'm not staying here. And he's like, why not? We're just trying to get some sleep. And I'm like, there's a hotel up the block. Come get me from the hotel. I'm not staying here. You know, and he's like, in his mind, why would we spend money on a hotel when we have a place here? And I'm just saying, I want to be comfortable. And I don't feel safe. And I don't know what they've been doing in these beds. I'm just not getting in them. So, that would be the discrepancies we would have. And our final discrepancies we was playing, and he did a lot of that jam band stuff and the like Woodstock type of things. He was the cat. And I'm talking about all of those legendary groups, the Allman Brothers and all of those, and surviving members from the Grateful Dead. They loved him. They do them all over the country, and they start in the spring, and they go right through until late fall. And so that's what we would do. And the last one, when I just said I can't do this anymore, because they were trying to put us in a camper that was in the woods, and the windows had been broken out. And I'm like, come on, man, I'll pay for the hotel. He's like, nah. He didn't even want to waste my money. He was very conscious about money. And I was just happy to be playing with Melvin Sparks. So I didn't care about the money. I came with money. I'll spend it. I don't care. Because he didn't know, and I never said it, but he didn't have to pay me. I was happy to be playing with him. He was Melvin Sparks.
Those last few years, I drove a lot for Melvin. Like I think he was a little sicker than maybe he let on. He didn't feel quite as good. Like everyone knew he had some health stuff happening, but I don't think he told everybody everything, right?
I wasn't aware of any health issues. I just knew he was big and he liked fried foods, he liked sweets.
And I do remember from traveling with him that, there was a lot of sugar. I'll never forget the first time I watched Melvin make a coffee. Because I almost feel bad saying this because I love Melvin and I'm not making fun of him, but I watched him take a cup of coffee about this big and put like that much white sugar at the bottom and then pour the coffee on top. And so, that'll add up after a while.
So he come in with a grocery bag full of junk food and sugary drinks.
But it wasn't until 2010 when he had to go to the hospital because of the stroke I think he had. And it wasn't until then that I realized how sick he was. I didn't realize the medicines and things like that. I was not aware.
Melvin, he was really overweight. He did go on a couple of diets, but the latter part of his life, he just ate what he wanted. He loved his snacks, his candy. About a few months before he passed, he had a mild stroke or heart attack and was put in the hospital for a couple of days. After work, he said, when you come see me, bring me some Chinese chicken wings. He loved his wings, so I'd bring him his chicken wings. I went to work. I almost didn't come home lunchtime because we were so busy. I worked at a school. So I did get a break. I went home lunchtime, and Elizabeth happened to be staying with me at that time.
Me and her both would leave for work 5, 6 in the morning, and we both would come home for lunch 11, 12 in the afternoon. Every day was routine. My father would wake up, he'll open the blinds, he'll turn on the TV, he might be cooking, he might be in the room on the computer.
And we just pass Melvin because he's usually napping on his easy chair with the TV on. But I walked in the house and I said, oh, the shades are still down. And Melvin is still sitting there. And then I said, Melvin? And then I said, Elizabeth, come down here.
And when she said my name, I knew something was wrong. I was like, man, what I was trying to push off as I don't want to deal with, I'm going to have to deal with right now. She said, I think something's wrong with Daddy.
And she tried to wake him. And it's too horrible to say. So we finally come to the realization, and I make a few calls, and people come, and the police came and said, yeah, he's been gone a few hours. And we were walking around and looking around, and that's when we see the doctor's appointment, and that's when I see the coffee and still in the pot and the cup of coffee. And that's when that's what happened.
His daughter Elizabeth called me up that morning. I saw the number. I thought it was Melvin. Then it was this Elizabeth. I said, I said, what happened? So she told me my father just expired. I said, oh man, because we're talking every day. Now that whole 2 weeks there, that whole conversation was he wasn't. I don't think he was expecting to pass away, but he's saying, so I want you to help me, because with the high blood pressure and the heart situation there, it's with insurance, it's hard to get a good policy, but you can get a policy. He said, man, I'm gonna try to get a policy, man, because I'm getting older here and with my health and stuff. So I want to make sure, man, if I pass, man, I want you to help me. That's what he's working on. I'm trying to help him because he knew I should do insurance. So he said, I want to get a nice policy, man. So something happened to me, man, I can leave my family, man, in a good situation, man.
Because I cried like a baby. I'm telling you, I cried like a baby. And that's true. From cheese. From cheese. I cried like a baby. I just thought God had abandoned me at that point.
We pretty much just kind of took in what happened and kind of tried to just make sure that we supported each other during that time, and also that we supported our family as well.
Elizabeth called me and told me. So when she called me and told me that, I was, I just couldn't believe it. And, I started crying and stuff. And then, being how I am, I just try to tough it out. And that was pretty much how I took that.
Melvin has no right to be dead. No right. None whatsoever. I don't know what happened. I don't know, but it's ridiculous. Melvin has no right to be dead.
If he was here today, what would you say to him?
I'm going up like you. I'm going up. Look at these shows. I'm going crazy. I'm gonna drop. It's lit. Thank you. Like I would say thank you for you know what I'm saying, being such an inspiration in my life and being one of those people that make me realize don't listen to what people tell you. Do what you feel in your heart. Do what you feel like is meant for you. That's what I would tell them.
For me, I would say I miss you and I think about you a lot.
I would tell him that I love you, Dad. I miss you. You know, it's good to see you. It's been a long time.
A world-renowned personality with a smile that brightened arenas, Melvin Sparks has touched the lives of many.
My father was great worldwide. They loved him in Europe, Moscow,
Greece, China.
There you go.
A husband, father of 5 children, uncle and brother.
Melvin Sparks' most notable achievement is in the love of his family.
His family basically was his number one, then his religion, then his music.
One thing my father said when he spoke at his tribute, and I think he would say it if he was here today. It is what it is. Thank you. Daddy, love you.
Get down tonight, everything's alright. Nothing on my mind but to have a good time. Let me see you move, gotta make it hot. Get on the dance floor, show me what you got. Get down tonight, everything's alright. Nothing on my mind but to have a good time. Let me see you move, gotta make it hot. Get on the dance floor, show me what you got. Amazed at the way he gazed at the eye. He asked, was I shy? And